merit, of a collective healing and recovery. Okay, so we are going to get started with our next Mishnah from Rabbi Yossi, the third student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And I'm going to read it in Hebrew because we know it's always better in the actual essential tongue of the Hebrew language. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi said, Yehi mamon chavercha chaviv alecha kashelach. Let the property, let the mammon, let the money, let the belongings, let the property of your fellow be as precious to you as your own. Prepare yourself to study Torah, for it does not come to you as an inheritance. And let all your deeds be for the sake of heaven. This is said by the third student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He's called the Chassid. We discussed the 5 students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and this is the student who's called the Chassid, which sounds like Hasidic, like there's Hasidic Jews living in Borough Park, but that's not what Chassid means. Chassid means someone who goes beyond the letter of the law, somebody who goes beyond the legal parameters of what God wants from him or her and seeks to beautify it and go beyond it and cleave to the service of Hashem. That's really the meaning of a chassid. And Rabbi Yossi is called the chassid. And the first thing, again, these are going back for just for clarity's sake, remember that these are the 5 students who I've said this so many times, but I can't really say it enough. The 5 students are the 5 students who transitioned Judaism itself from a religion that was contingent and dependent on a physical space. It was in the land of Israel for 1,000 years, from the time that after the death of Moses, when Joshua brings in the Jewish nation, fights the wars, and they enter the land of Israel for 1,000 years. Their religion, the Jewish religion, isn't quite a religion. The religion's kind of the wrong word. It is a peoplehood dependent on an indigenous soil, on the land of Israel. But after 2 times being exiled, the second exile being over 2,000 years, the question of what Judaism would become was a great one. Will we lose it now that we're not physically tied to the land of Israel? We've been kicked out of the land of Israel. What is our Judaism without the temple, without the Beis HaMikdash, without the korbanot, without the sacrifices, without Aliyat HaRegel, without coming to the land of Israel, all the mitzvot that are dependent on the land of Israel? What is Judaism? And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai takes these 5 students and recreates Judaism based on the Torah in its totality, and brings and enriches it with rabbinic Judaism. So these are the 5 rabbis who are the 5 rabbis that herald in the next chapter of Judaism, which is Jews not in their indigenous soil, flung all over the world. And the temple is no longer, the temple is now portable. By that I mean the temple is the Torah. They don't have the first Beis HaMikdash. They don't have the second temple. They have the Torah, and the Torah is the portable temple. It unifies the nation, and we've talked about this all the time, that wherever you are, you can be traveling in Tibet, and if there's a Chabad house, which there probably is, they'll be learning the same Torah portion there than you're learning in Highland Park. And that is because we now have what's called a portable temple. And it's the Torah that unifies the nation and keeps the nation cohesive, keeps the nation unified, and keeps Judaism alive. And these are the 5 rabbis that kind of herald in the chapter of rabbinic Judaism. Rabbi Yossi is the 3rd student and the one who is known for, in love of Torah, to go beyond the letter of the law, that his whole desire is to ask himself, what does Hashem want from me? What does he want from me? It's not enough to do what the halacha says. I actually crave to do the will of God and seek to fulfill it in all my capacity. This is our Rabbi Yossi. And this is his, not really mantra is not the best word, but these are his words. This is his aphorism. This is what he has to tell the nation as the nation moves through thousands of years of tremendous difficulty and tremendous pain and tremendous dispersion. These are his words. And the first words are, Yehi mamon chavercha chaviv alecha kashalach. Whatever is yours, and this is really, really incredible. And I think sometimes like events like the tragedy that just happened at your doorstep, they show you, they blur the lines of what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, and people come together in a way that is so powerful. And that's what I'm hearing from you, but it's really rooted in what is human nature. When it's mine, it's extremely precious. When it's my house, I take pleasure in where everything fits and how the sofa and the chair come together and the rug that I just bought. When it's my dinner, I take pleasure in the meal that I made and the presentation that I created. When it's mine, I literally see myself in it. I have invested of myself in it, and it's especially precious to me. In fact, the Talmud basically says the same thing in Tractate Sota. 3 things find special favor in a person's eyes: a wife to her husband, a hometown to its inhabitants, and a purchased item to the purchaser. Okay, that might be a little from a feminist perspective, but I think that the meta message here is whatever is yours, whatever has come from what you've invested in, what you've put of yourself into, whatever you've given of yourself in a powerful way, it becomes incredibly beloved to you. And I know I'm so far away, so I'm really looking at the whole tragedy that you just experienced so viscerally. I'm looking at it from thousands of miles away. But one thing I'm noticing is the intense identification with Highland Park. All sorts of imagery, like showing like the love of Highland Park, showing ribbons and hearts wrapped around the letters of Highland Park. It's as if what you've seen is now that we're investing all our activism and our love and our commitment to other people in this place called Highland Park, it's even more beloved to us. When it's ours, it's precious. It's truly precious. And we see this all the time, that even though there are many different social programs and there's many ways of protecting people in need, at the end of the day, the Talmud really states the bottom line of human nature. A person wants one measure of his own. In this case, the Talmud is talking about produce. A person wants one measure of his own cabbage, let's say, rather than 9 measures of his fellows. I would rather, through my own work, through my own investing in myself, I take more pleasure in the little garden that I've cultivated outside of my house than even the pleasure that I would have walking into the Botanic Gardens. When I invest of myself, I take so much pleasure in it. I identify so much with it. And here, Rabbi Yossi is saying, understand that identification of self with what you invest in, that belongs to everybody. And make sure that other people's property or what other people are invested in is as dear to you, chaviv alecha, as your own. And I think there's many ways we can do this. But of course, one of the ways we can do it is to be very careful with people's belongings. If we borrow something, we should be very careful with it. If we borrow a book, we shouldn't dog-ear it. We should treat people's things with as much care as we would our own. But I think on a deeper level, understand when you walk into someone's environment, or you see someone's children, or you walk into someone's event and see them dressed beautifully. Understand that it's chaviv alehem, that they invested so much in that, and make it precious to you. Honor them, not in a false way of, oh, your house is so gorgeous and you look so gorgeous and this is something, your car is so amazing, but recognize the pride and the pleasure that someone takes in whatever they've invested in. Think of a garden, and make it chaviv to you. In other words, tell them what you see, recognize their hard work. Recognize the preciousness that just like you relate to something that's yours preciously, recognize when it's theirs, they also have that same intense identification, and treat it with the same preciousness. So of course, be careful with other people's things. But I also think when you understand that somebody's invested a lot of time, or someone's invested a lot of effort, or even money, or creativity, or whatever it is, into something, show them you see that. Show them that you see the beauty of it. You see the magnificence of it, that you see the environment that created, that it fills them with pride when other people see it, because it's so precious. It just reminds us that the secret to identify, it's a secret to finding something beloved, to loving something, to identifying with something, is to invest in it. It's really to invest in it. And so to recognize that identification that I have, you have too. So let me treat that as preciously as I would treat my own. Now it's very interesting, because just a few Mishnahs back, Mishnah 15, Rabbi Eliezer says, let the honor of your fellow be as precious to you as your own. So it's really written the same way. It says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yehi kavod chavercha, let the honor of your fellow chaviv alecha kashalach, right? So we have the same exact chaviv alecha kashalach. It's actually, Rabbi Yossi is almost like repeating Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, let the honor of your fellow be as precious to you as your own. And I'll read what our book here has to say on Rabbi Eliezer. To recognize a person is not just to identify him physically. It's more than that. It's an act of identifying him existentially as a person who has a job to do. Only he can do it properly. To recognize a person means to affirm he's irreplaceable. To hurt a person means to tell him he's expendable, that there's no need for him. The halacha equates the act of publicly embarrassing a person with murder. I do want to tell you that I don't like to talk about, like, what you guys experienced was so visceral for you, so I don't have much to say about it. But I will just say that I don't know if you saw a TED Talk. It's 9 minutes. Actually, Steve Andrews sent it to David, and I can send it to Julie if you haven't seen it. It's a TED Talk with a man, and the title of the TED Talk is "I Almost Shot Up a School." So if you've heard this TED Talk,
I have it. David sent it to me this morning. I can send it to everybody.
Yeah, so it's an incredible TED Talk about somebody who almost did the same horrible act that transpired this week in Highland Park. But to listen to him is to understand Rabbi Eliezer's words. Let the honor of your fellow be as precious to you as your own honor. Your own, not honor, not kavod, not glory, like how many likes do I have on Facebook, who sees me, but do people see me? Do people recognize me? Do I exist? Do I matter? Am I expendable? Am I a nothing? Am I invisible when I walk in a room? How psychologically alienated can I become when I feel so invisible? It's a must watch. It's the story of a man who almost lost himself from the worst forms of non-honor, from the worst form of invisibility and psychological alienation. And what brought him from the abyss was someone simply recognizing him. It's the most incredible thing. But I think in our Mishnah, we can learn something, which is whatever, it sounds like the golden rule, but what you want, give it to the other person. You want appreciation. You want, if you don't know anyone, when you walk into a room, like, and you don't know, should I play with my phone? Should I put my hands in my pockets? Should I get food? Should I, like, what should I do with my, like, what should I do? Like, if you see someone like that, go to them. Whatever you would want to feel like you belong, to feel that you matter, give to the other person. I thought the correlation was very powerful. And the same thing is true for if something is precious to them, make it precious to you. Now, why mammon? Okay, I understand Rabbi Eliezer, let the honor of another person, that a person existentially matters, that they're created uniquely by the Creator to fulfill a mission that only they can fulfill. So honor, I get, but mammon, like let their physical property be as precious to you. So, oh, thanks, Julie. That's the YouTube, that's the video. Very worth watching. So what is it about money? Let your fellow's money be as dear to you as your own. So, okay, again, kavod, people are one thing, money is another. So how could they even, it's obvious that Rabbi Yossi isn't copying Rabbi Eliezer. He's making a commentary based on the Mishnah of Rabbi Eliezer. So what does it mean? Could it mean that money and kavod and honor are in the same, honoring a person's existence with a smile, with a caring word? Could that even approximate money? What does that mean? So Julie, go down for a second. We actually hear it in the Shema that money is really funny, and that people have a very funny relationship to money. It says right in the Shema, "V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha," you shall love the Lord your God, b'chol levavecha uv'chol nafshecha, with all your heart, uv'chol nafshecha, and with all your soul, uv'chol me'odecha, and with all your money, with all your wealth. And it says right here in the Talmud, for the person whose life is more valuable to him than his wealth, the Torah states, with all your soul, b'chol nafshecha. For those whose money is more valuable to them than their life, the Torah states, b'chol me'odecha. The only time I've ever heard money being more important to life is that silly Jack Benny joke. I think it was Jack Benny, right? When a mugger comes up to a guy and puts a gun to his head and he says, your money or your life? And the guy says, I got to think about this, right? Like that's the class. I think it's Jack Benny. I can't remember who made that joke, but who values money more than life? So I never really understood this. But I heard, I understand some people, money is extremely important, but life itself. So I heard Rabbi Noah Weinberg, alav shalom, speak from Eshet Torah, founder of Eshet Torah, speak about this so beautifully. He said, of course, nobody values money more than life in the long haul. And people won't die, they won't give their life for money, but they might give their life for an important cause, for Judaism, to save another person. That person might give their life for. But what does it mean, b'chol me'odecha, with all your wealth? And Rav Noah Weinberg says, first figure out what you would die for. Would you die for your family? Would you die for your Judaism? Would you die for God? What would you give your life for? And he says, once you know what you would give your life for, live your life with that value prioritized. Live it. In some ways, even though we've never been put to the test, may we never, but we know in Jewish history, many, many, many people died al Kiddush Hashem. They died in the sanctity of God for in acts of martyrdom. Rabbi Akiva himself and many, many others died for Judaism. But whatever we would give our life for, that we really have to say, I want to live my life with that value prioritized. And that, I think, is what he means by money, that we value other things a lot more than money. Everyone values love and family and health and all those good things before money. And yet, when it comes to the way we live life, we don't always prioritize our highest values, and money and work sometimes have inflated value. So that's why the Talmud says regarding the Shema, v'chol me'odecha, if it's money, live with your, understand what you would die for and live that way, live with that clarity. So maybe, so we have this very cryptic, obviously conscious decision to mimic Rav Eliezer's Mishnah, but it's about money. Yehi mamon chavercha. Let the money of another be as beloved as it is to you. Now, Rabbi Rabinowitz gives a different interpretation. Basically, how he interprets it is, let what you give, mamon chavercha, let the money you give away to your neighbor, i.e. tzedakah, let the mamon chavercha, let the money that you give to the causes you believe in, to the people that you help, to the tzedakah that you give, to the tithing from your income. Let the mammon that goes to chavercha, let the money that you give as tzedakah be as dear to you as shelcha, as what you already own, as the money in your wallet, as the money in your bank account, as the money in your stocks, is the money you've invested. Let your tzedakah be as dear to you as the money that you call your own. Because ultimately, and this really is, I mean, now that we're, I think we all think about this, but this week we thought about it even more. Ultimately, life is so fragile, and you cannot take anything with you to the next world, except for the good that you do. And that's what the Talmud, that's what the Torah means in Bamidbar, when it says, what a person gives to the Kohen, to the priest, it will be his. What you give into tzedakah will be yours. What does that mean? It means, like, I cannot take anything with me. There is no mammon. There is no property. There is no acquisition that I can take into the next world. The only thing I can take is the good that I do. Whoa, the more I think about this, the more I meditate on this, the more I understand. It's chaviv alai. It becomes so precious to me. It's the only thing I can take with me. There's a wonderful story that I won't go into, but about a man who I think it was Rothschild, who tried to be buried in his socks, and his children made a whole big deal. Ultimately, I've told it before, can't get into it, but even though this man was so rich, I think it was Rothschild, even though he was so rich, at the end of the day, not even a rich man can be buried in his socks. There is nothing we can take with us except for the good deeds that we do. If you allow yourself to use your imagination and to meditate on this truth, to understand that is my real wealth, what I give to tzedakah, how I help other people, the mitzvahs that I do, then that, even though people are so darn funny about money, and we feel so insecure about money, and we feel so worried about money, and we're so centered around money, and money is funny. But the more a person understands what I give away is mine, it's the only thing that I can say is mine into the next world for eternity. It is mine. My mitzvot are mine. My tzedakah is mine. That I will carry with me. That is the way to make it just as beloved. It doesn't say more beloved. It's very interesting. You'd think that it would say, okay, if I know that money's fleeting and I'm going to lose in the stock market and it, whatever, you think that I wouldn't make a big deal of it and I give it all away. I give it all away. But no, we're not supposed to live like that. We're not supposed to give it away, give it all away. There's a mitzvah of giving tithes of 10%. There's actually a maximum of our income that we're supposed to give away. It's 20%, meaning we're not even supposed to give more than 20%. And a minimum is 10%, which reminds us that we're supposed to, our wealth is, our money and our property is important to us. I think this is such a beautiful commentary on the reverence for human nature, that the Mishnah is not saying, let the money of your fellow, let what you give to your fellow be more beloved to you than what's yours. No, it's not saying that. It recognizes that what's ours, we identify with, and it's important to us. And we should keep it, and we should enjoy it, and we should use it well, and we should take pleasure in our lives through it. But just as beloved is the money that really belongs to us, and that is what we give away. So I think this is a beautiful, nuanced, beautiful understanding of human nature, that we can't be only focused on what belongs to us, but we can't be only focused on giving it all away. If a person really meditated on, oh my God, when I die, I can take none of this, none of it. I can only bring my mitzvot into the next world, only bring my tzedakah. If a person really meditated on it, they might give it all away, like in a fit of spiritual elation, like giving it all away. But no, Rabbi Yossi says, no, your money belongs to you to use in a way that brings pleasure to you and the world. But please always remember, what you give away is really yours, and let it be as precious to you. There are so many stories about this concept, but we'll move on. It is truly what belongs to you. It truly is your wealth. The story of Dan Yitzchak Barbanel, I'm not going to go into it, but the basic gist of the story is I can't remember I can't remember where he's from, Spain. The police wanted to inquire into his books, and they came knocking on his door, show us what you're worth. And he shows them his ledger. And the police say, this is all you're worth so much more. And you said, Dan Yitzchak said, you asked me what I was worth. This is what I'm worth. This is my tzedakah ledger. This is the ledger of what I've given away. This is my true worth. You didn't tell me to give you a ledger of everything I've earned. You told me to give you the ledger of what I'm worth. And what I've given away is actually what I'm worth. So it's important for us to understand that the physical world is here for us to enjoy. We don't need to give it all away. We're not meant to be martyrs, but we're meant to have the true understanding of what physicality is, which is what we elevate through giving away is what we can truly take with us. So that's really what the first part of the Mishnah means. I'm going to go a little bit faster because I want to open it up to everybody. Next. Prepare yourself to study Torah because it's not an inheritance to you. Okay, that's really strange because it says clearly in our Torah, Morasha Kehilas Yaakov, Torah Siva Lanu Moshe Morasha Kehilat Yaakov, which is the Torah is commanded to us by Moshe. It is an inheritance to the community of Jacob. So yes, it is. Like we learn that's the first thing a child learns is Torah, Tziva, Lanu, Moshe, Mora, Shaka, Hilat, Yaakov. It's literally the first verse that a child learns. There's songs about it. That the Torah is the inheritance of the Jewish people. So it's very strange. It is an inheritance. So there's a lot to say about this, but I think for us, the most important thing to tell us here is that it goes back to let another's property be as precious to you as yours. Why is yours so darn precious to you? Because you have invested and worked hard for it. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be your garden. It could be your home decor. It could be your family, lahavdil. I don't mean to put family with home decor, but it could be anything that you've invested in. It's so precious to you. An inheritance we don't work for. We get it if we're if we hit the lucky jackpot. We get an inheritance, but we don't work for it. It cannot be that the Torah is exclusively something that we don't earn through our own merit. You know, it's like the stereotype of the rich kid whose life is destroyed through drugs and craziness. Why? Because he never had to work a day in his life. He inherited great wealth from his grandfather. And he's just like squandering it all over the place because he never identified his hard work and his effort into that money. And so it's so easy to squander because he doesn't see himself in it. So it can't just be that the Torah is an unearned inheritance. And this is what Rabbi David Rosenfeld says. The Torah may be our national heritage. It is a Yerusha. It is our national heritage. But don't think for a second that it just comes to us. So it's elu ve'elu. It's both. It is ours by heritage. We inherit it, but it doesn't just come to us. Picture money in a bank. If you don't picture money, behind a vault. If you don't put your ATM card in and put your code in, no money comes out. If you don't put something in, you won't get it out. The money's still in the vault, but it doesn't come to you. This is the Torah without effort. The wisdom, the truth, the godliness, the eternal messages, they're all there. But you have to put in your card, so to speak, to withdraw it. Every individual in every generation must rediscover the Torah and must put in the effort themselves. They must form their own bond with its teachings. Our parents and teachers can teach us the words of the Torah, but even the most illustrious of teachers cannot connect us to it. We must take it to heart ourselves. Only we can put in the hours and the devotion, and only we can truly make it ours. So is it inheritance? Yes. Is it not an inheritance? Right. It is both. It is always available to us, but only through our own efforts. And just in case you think, well, that's easy to say for somebody who's, born into this beautiful family, this illustrious family. It's a Yerusha. It's an inheritance for them. But I've seen with my own eyes that sometimes having all of it on a silver platter is the most dangerous of all. I've seen people that came from illustrious families that if they didn't put in their own effort and establish their own relationship through their own hard work, through their own effort, it means nothing to them. There are many, many great, illustrious rabbis and teachers who have children who didn't follow in their pathway because nobody wants free bread. It's called the bread of shame. Everybody has a deep down drive to be the masters of their house, to receive things through hard work. So it cannot be that the Torah is simply an inheritance. An inheritance implies I didn't have to work for it. It's not enough. So let's look at the beginning of the verse. Prepare yourself to study Torah, because it's not an inheritance to you. Oh, yes, it is. It's inheritance for all of us. Well, an inheritance, but you have to do the effort to pull it out. Just like money in a vault doesn't make you rich. You have to put something in to get it out. So let's look at what we have to put in. Julie, go down. What does it mean to prepare yourself? Let's look at the Hebrew. The Hebrew is v'hataken atzmacha. Prepare. Hataken is from the word tikkun. So do a tikkun, do a repair of yourself to study Torah. So litaken is, it's not really to prepare. It really is like to repair, to fix, or to tikkun olam. What's the English translation of tikkun olam? Repair of the world. Is that what the English is? It's repair yourself to learn Torah, because it's not a freebie. It's not free bread. It's in a vault. You can't get it without identifying with it. This goes back to the first part of the Mishnah. What is beloved to you is what you invest in. I mean, I know people that literally said, I can't stand living in Highland Park. I don't want to live in Highland Park. It's so materialistic. I don't like it. Everybody's so materialistic. And now they have unbelievable identification with Highland Park, beloved, because people have given of themselves in the deepest way. So it is an inheritance, but it's not an inheritance. It requires a hard work. What's the hard work? To be hataken atzmacha, to prepare ourselves. Torah is like water. It's compared to water in many, many sources. And the idea of water is that in order for the water to be clear and cool and fresh and good, it must be served in a vessel that's also clear and good. So if you are the vessel and you are absorbing the Torah, then you must refine yourself to be a fitting vessel for the words of divine truth. So before you learn Torah, think of yourself like a vessel. I am learning the words that Hashem gave to the nation of Israel, the immortal words, the eternal truths. I must do a tikkun on myself. Now, this is very interesting. I think buried in this Mishnah is really a commentary on Judaism and some of the modern Judaism that we experience today, which is change yourself. Don't change the Torah. It does not say hataken es Torah. It says hataken atzmacha. Make yourself a vessel. Don't change the content to fit you. And this is very important. We use our human seichel, our human logic, and we say, this mitzvah is relevant and this is no longer relevant. And this is very, very dangerous, because we cannot, by virtue of being finite, ever reconstruct the Torah. We can only reconstruct ourselves and say, I am learning divine wisdom. I have to have a humility of what I'm capable of understanding, things that I will never totally understand, and a reverence for learning the immortal words of the Torah. And really, honestly, that's why all over the Torah, there's this idea of Moses as the most humble man who ever lived. In the Mount Sinai, which was the most humble mountain of all the mountains. So in the desert, which is bereft and empty, the desert has no vegetation, the desert has no life. So God speaks to the most humble man who ever lived in the Sinai desert, which is empty, which is bereft of vegetation. He speaks to humility in emptiness. Why? Because to acquire Torah, the Maharal says, to acquire God's wisdom, there has to be, you have to make space. You have to be what's called a mikabel. There's mashpia and mikabel. A mikabel is like, if you imagine an empty cup, right? Or imagine a cup. The more filled it is with content, like I have tea in it right now, right? The more tea in it, the less I can pour in. The less tea in it, the more I can pour in. So what does that mean? If we're the vessel, the more we're filled with our agenda, our sensitivities and sensibilities, what we think, our bottom line, we don't want to hear anymore. The more we're filled with ourselves, the less room there is for the divine wisdom. This doesn't mean that we have to do it all, but it does mean I recognize that when I learn something, I need to learn with a mindset of I can question it and challenge it, but ultimately I understand I'm finite and I'll never totally get it. I'll never totally get it, and I don't have to. I really need to make space. It's actually, there's a word for it in Chassidut called, it sounds negative. It sounds like negating yourself, but it's actually a value. It's called bitul hayesh. Bitul means like the negation of, or the cancellation of of a sense of self, but it doesn't mean in a self in a self-defaming way, or like I'm a nothing. It means I'm a something, and I have the ability out of my sense of being great as a human being to make space, to create space for God and for Torah. This is what it means to do a tikkun on yourself. Just as water always flows to the lowest point, Torah too flows to those who are humble. In fact, it was specifically because Moses was the humblest of all men that he was able to receive Hashem's Torah and teach it to all the people. So this is what it means. So it says the Torah is not an inheritance. Well, yes, it is. It says in the Torah itself that it's an inheritance to the Jewish people. But just like money in the vault, you're not going to get anything out if you don't prepare yourself and put something into it. How do you prepare yourself? By understanding you don't have all the answers, and to make space in your finite self for the possibility of infinite wisdom. Okay, we're going to finish with the last Mishnah. Okay, and that is V'chol ma'asecha yehu l'shem shamayim, and let all your deeds be for the sake of heaven. So this really is taught, the concept of l'shem shamayim is a very powerful one, and we've discussed it a lot, that it's really the question of what motivates us. What is motivating us? It goes back to the concept of our money and the concept of our relationship to Torah. What motivates us? And ultimately, Proverbs, Mishlei, King Solomon says it very straight out. A person who's righteous, they engage in the physical world to elevate it, to enjoy it, to take pleasure in it, but always to elevate it. That goes back to the previous. Let the money that you give away be as special to you, as precious to you as the money in your pocket, as the money in your bank account. So a righteous person enjoys the physical world and uses it to elevate, bring the world to a better place, and through that physical world, connect to his creator. But the stomach of the wicked is always in want, meaning if I'm only engaging in the physical world to tickle my senses for the pure gastronomic sensory pleasure of the physical world, then the more I take of it, the more I enjoy of it, the more I want. It creates almost like a bottomless pit of wanting more and more and more. So this is what it means to let everything we do be for the sake of heaven. Just like money, we're not supposed to give it all away. There's actually a cap of 20%. But the idea of when I give 10% of my income, I'm elevating all of my money. All of my money was given to me l'shem shamayim, even though 90% of it is for myself and my family. But taking that 10% and giving it away It is literally, it makes holy, so to speak. It concretizes all, sanctifies all of my money. Let everything you do be for the sake of heaven. That's the same thing, that just like the 10%, the idea is let everything I do be elevated through recognizing, acknowledging God in the physical, in every aspect of the physical world, through food, through drinking, through blessings, through whatever it is. Then when I make it holy, I take all of my physical pleasure from that thing and I elevate it. So that's, I think that really is, that's the words of Rabbi Yossi HaChassid, let's just see. Oh, and this is also important that we're reading from our book, from the foreign book. People often make a dichotomy. Let all your deeds be for the sake of heaven, not your religious deeds, like I go and pray in the morning, but then I go do my business and, I make a separation. People make a dichotomy between their religious lives and their secular lives. Okay, religion is manifested when a person's engaged in study or ritual. Secularism is manifested when you're engaged in general studies or business or social life. Rabbi Yossi teaches there is no dichotomy. All of life should be lived in the service of God. It's not a part-time commitment. It encompasses all aspects of life. That doesn't mean that our life has to be lived like angels. What it means is there's no aspect of our life that doesn't have a dimension that this is how I spiritualize it. I say a blessing on food and then I enjoy the food. I'm not supposed to say a blessing on food and deny myself the pleasure from it. I should take pleasure in it. I should enjoy it, but bless it first. And you take all the food with you. That's what it means to make all your deeds l'shem shamayim. Okay, so we have those 3 points of Rabbi Yossi. We can open it up to the group. If anyone has thoughts on any of those points or beyond.
Yes, I think it's very difficult for most of us to enjoy other people's money as our own. Rather than enjoyment, I think we probably more often experience jealousy or envy.
What's the antidote? Given Stephen, you're just bringing up good old-fashioned human nature, which the Torah, which the creator of human beings understands to be our nature. What is the antidote to the natural sense of deprivation or inadequacy or jealousy that comes with someone else having?
I hope you're not asking me.
I was, but
Throw it open to the group.
Group.
I've said it before, I never have a problem with it because I'm always happy for somebody and what they have, so.
Why? Why does it come naturally? Why?
Well,
why
I don't know, it just makes, I don't know, I'm just happy for people who have what they want and enjoy life to its fullest, and I do the best I can, and we do what we do with what we have, and everybody should enjoy, and I don't know.
So you know what that's called?
I never had a problem with it, so it's hard to relate.
So you have a natural ayin tova,
Thank
a
you.
natural good eye. I don't know how hard you worked for it. Because I'm listening to you, it sounds like it's just your natural disposition, but that is Maimonides' definition of a good eye. To take pleasure in the good fortune of other people, knowing that what's theirs is theirs, and what belongs to another person isn't, you can't touch. It belongs to them. It's part of their specific.
And to be happy in your life, you know.
Happy in your life.
Yeah.
So that's it. I mean, that's the definition of an ayin tova. So you have an ayin tova, a good eye.
Ellie,
By the way, we talked about this, but there's kinas sofrim. It's a very, very important, to Stephen's point about jealousy. There is a kosher jealousy. There's Just like there's a kosher lobster, it's like this fake white fish that tastes like lobster, right? There's kosher jealousy. So kosher jealousy is called kina sofrim. And what it basically means is perceiving good qualities in another person, like even a business ethic or whatever, successful personality, perceiving things in another person. And instead of taking it in like a rusty nail, like what do they have that I don't? Why do they have this and I don't? It's what quality am I seeing in them and how can I grow in that quality? So that is like what we call kosher jealousy. Like I find myself envious of something, but I'm taking that natural proclivity that could, because we learned elsewhere in Pirkei Avot that jealousy takes a person out of their life. That they're not, forget the fact that they'll never enjoy what John Doe has. They won't even enjoy what they have. The reason Sue said, I take pleasure in what other people have, and I'm happy with my lot. They're very connected, because when a person is jealous, they not only do they not enjoy what John Doe has, because what he has has nothing to do with them, but they don't even enjoy what they have. They don't enjoy the good that there's already. But there is a kosher jealousy, and that is, I see something, I have a yearning for it, almost an envy, but instead of begrudging that you have it, I'm actually going to say, like, sometimes you'll see someone who does so many acts of kindness. They're just always doing acts of kindness, right? So like, okay, our friend Robin over here, Robin does a lot for other people. So you could look at her and kind of even like put her down because you're jealous of it, or you don't think you do enough good, so you'll find fault. Or you can say, I like that. How can I bring more of that into my life? That's what's called kina sofrim, kosher jealousy.
Ellie, I don't know what happened.
Oh, sorry, Adrian, there's a hand, but I don't see you.
I didn't know if it was working because I can't get my picture to work, but.
Oh, well, I don't see your face, but I do see a nice emoji hand.
I don't either, but it's probably a good thing. But in any event, you know, one of the things that we can focus on every day is gratitude. And I think when you're focused on gratitude, it keeps your mind away. You focus on what you have that you're grateful for, as opposed to what anyone else has that, you know, you may think you deserve and don't have, or whatever. But I think gratitude is a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Gratitude, the answer to all the human strugglings. Hi, Robin.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I haven't seen you guys in such a long time.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. It's just been such a rough hour, because I'm usually like not around. I'm usually at one of two shelters. But and thank you for the compliment, Ellie. But I wanted to say wealth comes in different ways. It's not just a monetary, it's whatever you share. Because Ellie, like months ago, you know, you mentioned gifts in one of our classes, and it's what, you know, it's a sin not to share whatever gift you have. And to me, that's wealthier than any money. It's just sharing whatever you can of yourself. And I have to say, I live in a very, very generous area, and I'm on our charitable board. And what we raise in just my own little community of 1,400 doors is $1 million. And we disperse that to about 7 different charities. But giving your time, you need the people to write the checks, but you need the people to do the work. And, you know, so whatever people give of themselves, that is the gift. And I think that's where the wealth comes in, because it's just as important. And, you know, when we talk about kosher jealousy, you know, it's so interesting because I have, you know, we're in Florida right now. We don't have a place. I've only been home once. We're supposed to come home another time, but COVID got so, we're supposed to go to a wedding there. Everyone had COVID. We just ended up canceling our trip and just craziness. But it's like, when I go home, everyone's with their grandchildren. I don't have any married kids. I don't have any grandchildren. I don't have, it's such a different life to go back. And when I'm down here, the playing field is even, so I don't feel so bad. I don't feel that like, oh God, I want to be a grandma. I'm dying to be a grandma, you know? So I understand that kind of kosher jealousy in a different way, because even though I'm so happy and thrilled for my friends and I love their grandchildren, you know, it's just something, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
it sometimes is, you know, a little difficult.
yeah. Very natural human emotion.
And can we just say like a Misa Beirach for all the families in Highland Park? The little boy who was paralyzed is actually, his sister was one of my students. I know the family really well. It's just so awful, the suffering that everyone is going through at home. It's just beyond.
Beyond. Beyond. Really, honestly. All right, everybody. Hi, Donna. Thanks for the note. All right, everybody. I'm actually going to stay on because I have a meeting with my small business mentor who's in this Zoom room, Stephen.
But I also have a really important question for
yes.
you too. I need to know your take on it and everybody else's, because
Okay.
it's been bothering me for months. So a friend of mine, I'm going to say her husband is very religious, and she only she does everything. They belong to the Chabad in Florida, and they also belong to my synagogue when I belong to it at home. She's very right politically, extremely right, to the point you can't have a conversation. So when the Uvalde shooting took place, you know, we went out to dinner and we were talking about no one should have an assault rifle. You know, I don't care if you have a gun, but you don't need to have an assault rifle. So she starts arguing with me. Everyone should has the right to protect their family. I said, but no one needs to have an assault rifle. She goes, weren't you in Israel? You know, you held those guns and they pray. I said, Jackie, they're in war. You know, I said, that's different. Assault rifles kill people, you know, and my husband was in the reserves. And so she goes on to say that, yeah, she saw some homeless people. There's a lot of homeless people here. Like in the median, how they collect, like you see people on Fullerton, they'll be, you know, begging for money. She goes, well, I pulled my car over. And so she goes, you know, there's a lot of jobs here. Why don't you go get a job? They said, we're not citizens. So instead of saying, well, you can go to this place and go to this shelter, she called the police. And Jewishly, you know, I don't equate that with being a religious person, as they call themselves. And I've struggled with that. And it's really, I don't want to deal with them, because humanely, I think it's terrible that there's a lot of illegals here, because they're all the landscapers and who look in the restaurant. And I can't imagine turning a family in, you know, to the police instead of directing them to a shelter or something. And
So
I was just
saying,
wondering,
how could it be that that a person can call themselves religious and then have all these values?
Exactly.
That, yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough question. How can a person be religious and also believe certain things that I find so abhorrent? I hear you. It's a tough issue. Does anyone have anything they want to say about that?
I think there are two choices you have. You're not going to be able to change her mind. You're not going to be able to persuade her. I think if you want to maintain a relationship with her, you can probably just ask her why. Why does she feel the way she does? Why does she do the things she does? There's probably a reason for it. That might be one approach. The other approach would just be to sever your relationship with her. You know, if she makes
doesn't that go against like Judaism? I mean, doesn't that go
Sever your
against what
relationship? No, but I think what Stephen's saying is there's two things that are in your control. Either asking her or diminishing the friendship. But focusing on why she's doing what she's doing is focusing in on what you can't control. It's like you're leaving
Right.
your own agency, and you're focusing on what's wrong with her beliefs, which isn't, and you're not going to change her. But most of
No.
all, you're right. So yeah, I think Stephen, that makes sense to me. Robin, you have a choice. You
Yeah.
you can ask and simply listen, or you can, make choices around the relationship, but focusing on, like the saying, like when you're focused on what the other person does wrong and how ridiculous they are, it's like you drank poison and you expect them to drop dead, meaning you're the one who's filling yourself with all the toxic anger and you're hoping they're going to somehow. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, your question is an old one. You're
Yeah,
not the first person to ask it.
thank you.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one, especially now when there's such polarization. It's not an easy one. Okay, everybody, thinking of all of you as you go through this this rough experience. Really thinking of everybody. Have
Thank
a
you
good
for this
day.
wonderful
Thank you, Al.
discussion.
Thank you,
Bye,
Ellie.
everybody.
Thanks, yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ellie. Thank
you,
Ellie.
Allie, I'll make you the host so I can get off of here.
Oh yeah, you gotta
okay?
make me the
Yeah,
host. Right.
I'll stop
Oh,
recording.